Okay, and we're recording. Oh my God, it feels so awkward right now. Hello, welcome to my channel. This is Erica Merriweather. This being known as myself is Erica Merriweather. Um, and my channel is called Chiron's Daughter. So welcome to Chiron's Daughter. I created this channel to mainly talk about astrology and show examples of the kind of work that I do as an astrologer, but also to share other things that I'm involved in. As you can see, I have lots of oracle and tarot cards behind me, so I will do some readings and card pullings on the show. Also, just to talk about things I'm learning and interested and excited about in astrology. For example, I just upon the recommendation of a very dear friend of mine, told me to read this book, Chiron Rainbow Bridge Between the Inner and Outer Planets with Barbara Handclough. And I cannot wait. Basically, as soon as I'm done with this episode, I'm going to start reading this book. And maybe I'll do like a Chiron's Daughters book club. I like it. It's official. Okay, now we have Chiron's Daughter book club. And the first book is going to be Chiron. So now that I've said the word Chiron 57 times, let's talk about that. So Chiron is in astrology, it is a asteroid or planetary position. Depends on who you're talking to. It's a planet versus an asteroid. But it's named after a mythological god from Greek mythology, Chiron, who was the wounded healer, also known as the centaur. And Chiron was, long story short, a very important healer and taught many other important healers in Greek mythology. Chiron did have a daughter. I can't remember the name of the daughter right now because I'm on the spot. But I specifically did not choose to name the channel after the daughter's name because basically just calling it Chiron's daughter because I'm the daughter. But there are many legends of different people, different gods, humans, you name it, that Chiron taught the healing arts to. And one of my favorite ones is Asclepius, which almost was the name of his channel, but definitely is way too complicated to have people remember and spell. But Asclepius created a healing center, and Asclepius's philosophy was that the best and most powerful kind of healing combines medicine, combines herbs and natural healing with art and music and philosophy and astrology. And that is basically me in a nutshell. I like to combine all of those things together in one place. And, the more magic, the better. So welcome to my channel. I hope that introduction made any kind of sense at all. And in just a few moments, I'm going to be joined by my good friend, Jonathan De La Torres, who is going to be doing an astrology reading with me live. Well, this is pre-recorded, but it's live in the sense that we haven't talked about his chart ever before. And this is going to give an example of what it's like to get a reading with me. We're going to focus on specific areas of Jonathan's chart today because normally if you do a birth chart reading with me, it's an entire hour or more as we go through your birth chart. So that's going to be a bit too long for this. But we are going to talk about it through the lens of Chiron and also through the lens of this upcoming new moon in Scorpio. So before I invite Jonathan in, I wanted to just tell you a little bit about, actually, no, I'm not going to, because when Jonathan comes on, I'm going to need to explain this to him too, because he is, as far as I know, pretty new to astrology. So we'll just all be in it together. So I'm going to hit pause and bring Jonathan into the room in just a moment. Okay, so recording is now in progress. Hi, everyone. So this is Erica from Chiron's Daughter, and I have with me today Jonathan De La Torres, who is here to do a mini astrology reading with me. Full disclosure, I do know Jonathan. We have known each other for several years. He's a absolutely wonderful human being and a very talented actor. But I have never talked to him about his astrology. I've never seen his chart before until, 2 days ago when he sent me his birth information. So this is a hot off the presses conversation in that area. But hi, Jonathan, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's so good to see you and connect
You
even
too.
like this. But yeah,
Yeah.
as I was telling you earlier, I love your space.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone. Um, yeah, so you're my inaugural episode. You're actually the first one. So welcome. Thank but there'll be
Thank you. Thank you so much.
yeah, happening in the space as I go along. And I wanted to start off with a mini reading and do this with you because this is really going to be the heart of my channel. I will be talking about to everyone out there. There'll be times when I'm going to do tarot card readings and oracle cards. I'll also talk about other things that I'm really into, which ranges from a whole host of things. There's going to be a book club at some point. We're going to do a lot of new moon and full moon things, as well as things around like herbal medicine and natural healing and all kinds of stuff like that. And I'll post more on that later so I don't just like keep talking too much here with you. But we're starting off with Chiron because that really is the heart of my channel, hence the name. And we were just talking before I turned the recording on about what Chiron is. And so it's this really incredible, beautiful place in your chart. It's some people say it's an asteroid, some say it's a planet. It doesn't really matter. It's to me. But what Chiron really is about is it's this aspect of your chart where it's really like a linchpin. It's like a key to unlocking a lot of your greatest potential in life. It starts out with this area where it's called the wounded healer. So it's where early on in life we experience a lot of pain. And it's kind of this Achilles heel. It's that thing that we're always struggling with and working on. But as we work our way through it, it becomes one of our greatest gifts. And one of the things that really turns us into a healer that then can help lots of other people. And we end up going full circle with ourselves and healing that initial wound even inside of us. So I think Chiron is, to me, it's the most important part of your entire astrology chart, but almost no one knows what it is. And I can guarantee probably you have never heard of it before. Is that correct?
No, I mean, no, no, because I think I've heard, I've read it or something, but I don't know what it means. I mean, because
Yeah.
I'm not too familiar with astrology or anything like that. But when you were talking about like the lesson that you learn and like you kind of going inward, it kind of reminded me of like an Ouroboros. You know how it's like eating
Yeah.
its own tail, the snake, the
Mhm.
yeah.
Yes.
But no, I'm not familiar with Chiron and everything that you've explained. So.
Well, that's perfect. And actually, the Ouroboros is really that's such a great example because part of Chiron, like Chiron, is in Greek mythology. He was the centaur who was also like a healer and taught a lot of early Greek medicine came from these mythological stories of Chiron the centaur, who then mentored a lot of other gods. One of them was called Asclepios, who believed and had this whole healing center in ancient Greece that combined music and art and herbs and natural healing and medicine and astrology and all these things together. And the used the snake was a huge part of that symbology of Asclepios. So the Ouroboros and the snake, and then in modern medicine today, like have you ever seen that pharmaceutical sign,
The
the snake thing? That's
right.
from Asclepios and Chiron and that whole area and the Ouroboros. It's all connected.
Wow. I mean, we could probably. I have to tell you. I have to share a story with you later about the centaur, but in another time because it's very
Okay.
interesting. Yeah.
Oh, I love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
No accident. Um, okay, but let's go into your chart because I definitely want to get into that with you. Um, we're not going to go into your full birth chart, but I do want to just give an overview really quick so that it sets a context for when we're going to talk about Chiron. So you're a Gemini, and your top three, so your sun is in Gemini, your moon is in Gemini, and interestingly enough, your Chiron is also in Gemini, which is not that common that people have their sun sign and their moon sign and their Chiron all in the same thing. Usually it's different stuff that's happening in those. But that makes it actually really special for you because the path of Gemini is very important for you. We have so many things in our chart. We have the sun, we have the moon, we have Venus, Mercury, Mars, all these other planets, and they all mean different things and they rule different parts of our personality and our life. But with you, with this energy of Gemini, it's really like, especially with your Chiron, a huge part of your life path is communication, which is the number one thing that Geminis really are all about. Is they are the communicators. They're the speakers of the zodiac. A lot of people have the association with Gemini as like the twins, like there's the good one and the bad one, but that's true as well. But how I really see Gemini the most is it's really about what you have to say. It's what you have to communicate. The only reason why I feel a lot of times Geminis have this like, evil twin syndrome or this like bad reputation for that is really because Geminis are very precise and very detailed. They're ruled by Mercury. That's the planet of communication and logic and reasoning. And they're an air sign, so they're very fast in their thinking. So they make connections really quickly. They're really good at assessing things and finding patterns and being able to recognize things. Now, because of that, they can also have the tendency to be a bit overly critical because they see things and make connections really, really fast. So a lot of times, if there's like the bad side of the Gemini versus the good side of the Gemini, when that happens, it's usually because there's a bottleneck somewhere in terms of their communication. So they're not really able to say everything that they want to say, or they're holding things back. They're not really in their truth. It's that kind of, it's like a pressure cooker that will happen where you just get kind of pent up and then all of a sudden things come out. So that's where the Gemini gets in trouble, where they'll like say something that offends people or is too sharp or too pointed. They're like too quick with their tongue kind of thing. That it's usually because it's been kind of building up for a while and then it has to like burst out. So that's a lot of where that like reputation comes from. But with you and your Gemini, you have it in specific places that are called houses. So there's 12 houses in astrology, and each house rules a different area of life. So your sun is in the 11th house. Your moon is in the 10th house. Both are in Gemini. So those two houses are really important because the 11th house is the house of humanitarianism. It's the global house. It's large social groups. And the 10th house is the house of career in the form of a bigger scale, like reputation, fame, public. So those are two very public houses to have your sun and your moon in that. The 10th house is also the house of the father as well. And so how that all comes together is basically your Gemini is really focused in using your words, even your internal words, whatever it is that you want to communicate, whatever it is you have to share, whatever it is you have to teach, to go into your career, to go into how you present yourself to the world, and then also to go into the sense of like what you have to say to larger groups of people. So you've probably felt from a young age that you had like kind of more of a mission. Like I'm here, I have a lot to say. And I would guess you probably from a pretty early age were very vocal about like what you believed in, about issues of like social justice, of how things could be better, about what you saw going on in the world. Like you would have had an inclination towards that from a very young age. Would you agree? Does that resonate?
Yeah, yeah, no, yeah, definitely, absolutely. Yeah, in school, peer mediator, and yeah, I was always, yeah, or and even like helping, like I was in this club where we would help the new students, get accommodated with the school, and so yeah, that definitely rings true, and especially the part where you're like, I always felt like I had a mission, like something to do here, at a very young age for sure.
Yeah, perfect. That's going to be on top of that, that kind of mission sense is it shows up in other places in your chart too. So it's not just in the Gemini because you have your Mercury, which is the planet of communication. So that's like our logic, our reasoning, how we speak, what we have to say. You've got that in the 11th house as well. So again, that 11th house is humanitarianism. That's global. So you're going to be interested in those things and have a voice in that area. It's like you're hardwired to be that way. Your Mercury's in Cancer, and Cancer is the sign of the mother. It's the nurturer. They're very much of the heart, and it's a water sign. So there's a lot of emotional content with Cancers. So when you have Mercury, Cancer, 11th house, you definitely have this very strong emotional connection to helping, being of service, like making the world a better place. That's something that you really, really feel very naturally strong about doing. And the sense of like wanting to take care of others is a big thing for you. And then your Mars is in the same place. And Mars is the planet of action. It's how we do things. Again, Cancer, 11th house. So you kind of like so much of your chart is really like an activist and a humanitarian. Like that would make so much sense because it's so hyper focused in these areas. Um, what's interesting is you have, well, there's a lot of interesting things. I said I wasn't going to do your whole birth chart, so I'm like holding myself back to not just tell you. Um, but going to your Chiron, I'll talk about where you have some contradictions in your chart. So this is probably where you feel like a push-pull in life because your Chiron's in Gemini. So as much as you are here to communicate and here to speak, you also oftentimes have difficulty in saying what it is you want to say or in being understood properly. Chiron and Gemini in the 10th house, especially, is more, it's not so much the humanitarian side, it's the side where it comes for like personal reputation. So a lot of times, Chiron and Gemini 10th house people, when they're growing up and like elementary school age, middle school, around that time, experience um, really feeling misunderstood. So, as much as you had something to say, oftentimes it was not either you couldn't get it across. Sometimes people with this placement have actual speech impediments, like they'll have like a really strong lisp, or they'll have something physically happening, um, or they'll experience like bullying, where people will misjudge them. They'll get labeled as something, or they'll have conflict in their family and they'll try to be the speaker but pretty consistently or potently in certain parts of their young adult life, they'll be misunderstood and or just like flat out told they're wrong. And so it creates this tension where on the one side, all you want to do is speak and teach and be of service in communication, but you often struggle with believing and feeling like um, people are listening, like people really hear you, You might feel often misunderstood, and some struggle with like being perceived properly, like not wanting to be labeled or judged or miscategorized, and almost to the point where it can be really like crippling sometimes, because you can get very afraid of saying the wrong thing because it'll affect the way people think of you. Does that make sense?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I think it's ringing true. Especially, I mean, we moved to Arizona from Mexico when I was 5. So my first language was actually Spanish, right? So in school, it was like that. I had a lot to say, but the language was just it was just different. So for a few years, I think it was like not that I was shut down, but it was just like the communication was, yeah, it was a challenge. It was a struggle. And then growing up, I think it kind of came around as well with in Arizona, incense or altars and things like that aren't necessarily the norm like it might be out here in LA. I'm live in Los Angeles now. I don't know where a lot of your viewers are from, but so when I was over there and I was like, already doing these things, just they would come natural to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, people would be like, okay, dude, like, what are you doing? What is this? Yeah. And it was just like this misunderstanding. And so then I come to LA and it's like, oh, I'm home. It's like so many people, there's reasons behind the things that we do, like the crystals or the altars or, whatever it is that I was already tuning into. So yeah, it rings to true what you're saying in two different periods in my life. So it's very interesting.
Yeah.
What else do you see there?
That's it's so cool. I love, this is one of my favorite parts, is like seeing how it plays out for someone, because I know like, okay, it can go this way, this way, this way, but then hearing how that manifests for you is it's so exciting to understand like how that works. And just as a side note, Chiron's it's your Chiron placement is kind of generational. So it goes within like 3 to 4 years of when you were born. So there's a lot of people, we're very close in age. Um, I forget what year you're born because I just wrote all your stuff down, but not your birthday. But
85.
85. Okay, so I'm 83, and I'm Chiron and Gemini in the 10th house as well. So we have the same kind of placement. Um, and how it played out but we have a very different chart. I'm a Virgo, like
Right.
you're, so there's a lot of different things in there. But like for me, when I was growing up, I had a lisp. I had like physical kind of speech stuff going on. And then I always felt like kind of the odd one out. I had, similar things where it was like I had a lot to say, but I didn't really grow up in an environment that was really conducive to me saying those things. So it's fascinating to see like how these things come out and like play out for each individual person. But for you, this part about, I love that you told me about the spirituality aspect of it, that you were from a really early age, you knew about incense and, altars and things like that, because that's also in your chart. Um, you have your path of fortune in the 12th house, and path of fortune just sounds a lot like what it is. It's where you have a lot of luck in life, and especially in career. If you integrate aspects of your path of fortune into what you do professionally, it tends to go very well for you. Um, Yours is in the 12th house in Leo, and the 12th house is the house of spirituality. It's the house of karmic completion, but it's also like the house of mysticism. It's like, interest in karma in the biggest sense, like full circle, um really like deep spirituality, cosmic understanding. So like when we were talking about the 11th house, how that's about the world, so the 12th house is the cosmos. So that's where you really become your most spiritual expression, is in the 12th, and that's in your path of fortune. So when you are in alignment with actually, talking about ideas, showing ideas, because this is in the sign of Leo for you, which is all about the showman, that's really your expression is through Leo. That's the performer in you, that's the creator in you. So when you start bringing your love for and sense of mysticism and spirituality and meditation, when you display that, things tend to go well for you. It's like you're on path. And what's interesting is, in contrast to how your Chiron and Gemini 10th house, from an early age, that you had those moments where that wasn't really accepted, and you had to kind of be whatever you want to call it, the rainbow sheep of the family, or the black sheep of the town, however you want to label it, but like the odd one. But it ends up actually being an area where that's exactly what you're meant to do, and you can articulate and share so much about it. So you can be a teacher in this area. And that's how Chiron plays out a lot. It's like where you first start off is something that you can't really do. You have an innate ability to, but it gets, shut down in some various ways, intentionally or not. But it's like there's not a clear channel. So then it tends to go underground for a while. But the point is that you actually take it full circle and become that person that you were over here in its fullest
Hmm.
expression. Because now you've added all these extra layers of life and information. So your Chiron and Gemini, if you kind of marry that with your path of fortune in Leo and your other all these Gemini placements in your 11th and 10th house, it all kind of creates this picture that you would really be a very big speaker. And that can be as an activist, it also could be as an artist, it can be in anything you're doing. It's not necessarily a specific career path, but that you would infuse whatever you do and whatever you create with this sense of spiritual connection. You're going to do things of meaning. If you're going to paint a painting, it's probably going to have a very deep meaning. It'll be with purpose. Anything you do is going to have that flavor to it. You could sell cars, but your car business would have a major component that would somehow be spiritual or somehow be philanthropic in some way. It's like anytime you line those things up, it's like the whole, the universe lines up with you to make that flow even more, because it's kind of what you're meant to do. That's how Path of Fortune works. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, it does. I love it. Yeah, I love it. I mean, even as an actor, the projects that I sometimes choose, I always feel like it's either like, bringing some sort of joy to people, or it has uh, a meaning. Like, for example, the latest film we did was on immigration, right? So it's like, I feel like it's things that really like are important to me, or that are gonna, show people how they can be, because it is a reflection of life. And so it's always has to be with a good message of some sort. And so, yeah. And one last thing, I mean, I'm going to throw this in really quick, but where it also rings true, when I graduated high school and I wanted to pursue my acting career, and I moved to Mexico City for about a year, it just wasn't happening because I was so young. But my dad kind of shut it down, right? And it was just like, you need to come back and do something that's realistic,
Mm.
right? So not this communication avenue that I wanted to pursue. So for many years, I mean, until I moved to LA again, it was just like, I was doing other things. I was working with the elderly. So I guess it's back to what you were talking about, like humanitarian. I was working with the elderly for many years. So yeah, it's wild.
That's amazing. And that's what I was saying before. The 10th house is also the house of the father. So that hits the Chiron. So that totally tracks. It was your dad. Chiron 10th house. Also, that's another way it can be expressed, is like you have some conflict with your father figure in your life that says like, no, you can't be this thing. I'm not going to understand you properly. But then that becomes, again, this is the beauty of Chiron. It becomes like, that's your kiln. That's you put the wet clay in, and that's the fire that you go through, but that shapes who you are, so that you end up kind of building up that energy to be like, well, no, this is who I am. Like, I have to be who I am. You're taking it full circle through the Chiron. That's the way that it works. It's like you may have never, there's a part of you that maybe would have never become an actor and never gone on this path with the commitment and the firepower that you have and the connection that you have. If your dad hadn't done the opposite, been like, oh no, that's not who
Mhm.
you are and you're not allowed and you can't. It's like you can think of it like it actually activated a part of you that eventually would go, oh no, that's exactly who I am. You get what I'm
Mhm.
saying? It's like it's like
Mhm.
the diamond coal analogy. Um, Beautiful. I love that. And okay, so now I want to go in to what I was saying before we started about talking about the new moon in Scorpio, because that is connected to specifically for you, your Chiron. And you have a lot of things happening. These are called transits, and transits in astrology, it's like a season. So it's a window of time where certain parts of your chart are especially active. And for you right now, your Chiron is especially active, which is great. That means that you're completing certain cycles and you're kind of starting new chapters of your life when this happens, and any healing that needs to happen as well. Um, so you've got, okay, so the Chiron transit is, it's really lovely. It's in a sextile with your moon sign. Now, they're the same. Your Chiron is in Gemini 10th house, your moon is in Gemini 10th house. So basically, what that means is that because the moon is your emotions, your ability to understand your emotions, communicate through feeling, and do any emotional healing that you feel needs to be done right now, it's extremely supported to be able to do that. So if there is anything, residual between stuff you may still be carrying with your relationship with your dad, if there's anything that feel you need to work on or work through around your ability to express yourself, if people understand you, all of that's really, really supported right now. It started in actually May of 2022. So it continues until the end of March this year. So if you think back to last May, over this 2 year period, this was actually like a very special time in your life for you to dig pretty deep in the connection between basically, your heart, your feelings, your emotions, and your public life, and what you have to say and communicate, how you communicate with others, and if they understand you. You had another thing going on with that, and in the same window of time, your Jupiter was really involved, and your Jupiter's in Aquarius in the sixth house. So did you have any, because it could have played out in a couple ways, but did you have anything where you were really focused more on your health in these last 2 years?
On my health, um, no, I mean not my health.
Well, because the house is the house of it's the house of service, like being of service, and the house of the body and physical health. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, yes, I mean it's really interesting, but I guess it was kind of a service, but my I really encouraged my sister to move out here. She's very young, dude. She's like 22. She's a baby. And I really did it, because I wanted she's the baby, so I wanted mom to kind of just like finally just, have more time for herself and all that stuff. So I got myself a two-bedroom and had my sister move in. And so I think for those 2 years, I did take on like almost like a fatherly role for a little while. And it was, yeah, it was, we have fun. I love her. We have a blast, but there was challenging moments for sure. Me balancing my career my personal life, and then being kind of like a father to like a 20-year-old, it's like
Yeah. Yeah.
it was, yeah. So maybe that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's
So
exactly. Yeah, no, for sure. Because that's sixth house is like sixth house is interesting because again, every house there's like three or four different things that a house can do. So you kind of have to do the Sherlock Holmes of figuring out exactly how it is for a specific person. But yeah, the sixth house is where you're taking care of you are taking care of people because it is being of service. Aquarius is your Jupiter is in Aquarius in the sixth house. So Aquarius is more again, that kind of humanitarian, more of the visionary part of you. But because it was in the sextile, so it had this relationship happening with your Chiron in 10th Gemini. So, and the moon, again, the moon is also connected to motherhood and nurturing. So basically, what you were doing in this 2 year period, you were kind of both mothering the moon and fathering the 10th house for your sister, helping her in the home, in life, that's nurturing, caretaking, being of service, balancing it between being of service and your career and your work, which is also sixth house, and kind of completing all these different cycles. And a lot of what was happening was as you were kind of really being a dad to your sister, that was clearing some of the some of the things between your relationship with your own father. Does that make sense?
yeah, yeah, for sure. I think it stir up some things
Yeah, I mean, there's things
definitely.
to unpack there. Like I kind of did
Yeah.
a huge turkey dinner in that one sentence of like, yeah, just leaving your dad because you fathered your saying dad. I know that's like a that's
Yeah.
um, but there are things to see the patterns in the cycle there because that is a big way of working on any 10th house areas is when we have to play a father role. And that doesn't really have anything to do with gender because you can what is fathering someone, protecting them, helping them get set up, um, being kind of the strong and also like a masculine and feminine energy has nothing to do with gender, and we have them in both of us. We have masculine and we have feminine energy. So the feminine is more like the receptive nurturer part, and the masculine is more the protector, but also the like, go out and do part. So one's coming in and one's going out. Um, so you were actually in a dynamic where you were exploring both of those polarities while you were taking care of and supporting your sister. So that's a massive thing. Like you can unpack that for a while. You could do a whole medicine journey on that. on that. But
I might
it
have to.
it is in there. But I'll tell you one more thing, because with this new moon in Scorpio, there's some completion, even more so in that, because your your Scorpio moon. Now your moon is in Gemini, but the moon itself right now for everyone is in Scorpio. So there's all these transits, right? So when we have a moon in something, a new moon or a full moon, it's going to basically hit a certain point of your birth chart. And so that's how you'll feel it more in that area than anywhere else as a Gemini and as you with your chart. So for you, yours this new moon is hitting your fourth house. And the fourth house is the house of the mother. That's where we mother, we nurture. That's also our early home life. That's also family. So there's this, it's like a full circle moment as you're heading into the end of these transits. Like I said, this is like by March. It's not like I'm not saying your sister's not going to move out by March, but this a lot of
Oh, she's out. We live in, we've got our own places now. She's doing amazing. She's doing phenomenal.
okay, great. So this is kind of like the the keynote. This is the put a cherry on it. This is your opportunity to really look back and understand what that whole thing was about on an emotional level. It's like a completion of, oh, okay, so we spent this time together that we really actually were healing a lot of ancestral things and a lot of things in our family line and a lot of things that we were experiencing kind of with each other, working out. It's like a mirror of your relationships with your parents.
Mm.
So that was like, that was a really, actually, that period of time in these past 2 years was like really, really significant for you in your astrology. And my guess is over the, towards the end of the year and the next coming month, it's like you're gonna actually start to really see the impact it had on you in a very positive way, and where it kind of healed a lot of ancestral things. And then moving forward, you're going to see this playing out in your career. So it might not be a straight through line that you'd be like, oh, I can totally trace it back to this. But what the chart's saying is all these connections from like family, father, home, mother, environment, all that work there is all, if I were to show you a picture of your chart, there's all these lines, physical lines that connect to your 10th house. So all this work here is opening up all your channels of communication in your 10th house. So you'll find your creative expression and what you have to say and how you present yourself in the world is going to be clear, strong, supported, and more resonant. And so in past versions of you where you may have felt like not totally understood or like you didn't quite have your audience yet, that is going to start really shifting for you in 2024, where you're going to be very, how you present yourself is going to be really clear. And that's one of the things, in terms of reputation and career, the more clearly your message comes across, the bigger your audience becomes. So
Mm.
looking at this, I think for you, everything that you kind of did over these past 2 years, you're going to see a lot of career expansion happen in this next year.
Fantastic.
I'm sure you're
I'm
excited.
ready.
It kind of
I
like,
love it.
it shaped you. We go through, a lot of times we go through these very, intense, more internal things, like what you were saying, like how do I balance like my career with taking care of my sister and doing all these things. But all of this like really intense inner work now for you, especially because of your chart, is gonna play out in how you present yourself. So you're going to really be much stronger as a professional and as an actor, as a teacher, as a speaker, all these things. Like you're going to be much more in your own being, which, congrats. Every opportunities always follow when that happens. Um, and when you, this is the last thing I'll say, when you bring in your anything 12th house, anything that has to do with, your sense of your love of mysticism, your kind of cosmic perspective, um, and your big sense of freedom, because 12th house is also a lot about freedom. When you bring those things into your creations and your self-expression, it's gonna hit right for people. So it's about moving forward in 2024. A lot of it is like you painting with a very precise brush, but a big one. So it's like, you're going to be very clear about what it is you're creating, what it is you want to do, what it is you want to say, and be very bold in doing that. So you're heading into this new chapter of your life where you have a lot to say, you know what you want to say, and you no longer need to hesitate at all about saying it because you're going to be very precise in how you do it. It's like everything's lining up now. You've earned that through all these different cycles that have been happening for you to be able to be like, oh, I get it now. That's the ultimate with your Chiron and Gemini and all these Gemini placements is for you to be like, I am Jonathan. This is my message. Here's how it's coming across. No hesitation because it's so precise. So then it hits.
I love it. I'm taking it all in.
Yeah, yeah, it's great. That's why I record these too, so you can have it for later too.
Re revisit.
Yeah,
That's incredible. That's amazing. Just yeah. Like you said, it was a big turkey dinner, and there's just like a lot for me to digest right now.
yeah,
But yeah, it's I love it. I mean, I love it. There's still things that I should probably revisit, but I'm definitely ready for whatever's coming.
yeah.
I feel it. I feel
Yeah,
it.
that's
Do
great.
you do you suggest anything for the new moon?
Yes,
Any
I do.
anything?
Yes,
Yes, yes.
yes. So this new moon, okay, so new moons are about, like I said, the word new is in them. So it's about intention setting. It's about kind of new energy, bringing things in, um, setting things into motion. Full moon is more like receptivity. It's about like kind of taking stock and evaluating and seeing like, oh, okay, you'll all moons are good for manifesting, basically, in my book. Like, if you want to manifest on a new moon, if you want to manifest on a full moon, go ahead. Um, they're good chapters, right? But new moons, I like especially for looking ahead because we're kind of starting over. The moon is going to be revealed to us over the next cycle, right? So as it becomes the full moon. So, number one, it's in Scorpio, and Scorpio is about emotions and intensity. There's things happening with this particular Scorpio new moon that's aspected by um, Uranus. So, it's a little high intense. So, what I would say to everyone is if you have a lot of like strong feelings coming up and big shifts around you that are kind of intense, don't be surprised because that is the energy of this particular moon. Um, so kind of watch out for that and also don't be surprised. And if things do come up, because Uranus is like the wild card planet. It's the planet that is the one that's like all about freedom and kind of spontaneity and also shaking things up. So in this, from now until the new moon's the 13th, and then it culminates, there's kind of a window afterwards of about 3 days. So over the next, whatever, 5 days or so, be on the lookout. There might be some kind of intense situations or shakeups or things like suddenly happening. And know that anything that happens in this period, it's supposed to. It's because energy needs to move. So that's a lot of people around me, I've seen that that's happening. It's like, whoa, that was really intense, but it was in an area where energy was very stagnant or building and needed to move. So how I would use this new moon is to actually like meditate on that and look across the landscape of your life and go, is there anywhere that I'm currently kind of pent up or stagnant? Because if I can
Mhm.
see that, I can start actually making those shifts myself so that it doesn't have to necessarily happen for me. Um, that's for you in particular, your fourth house, your 10th house. So, like, our whole conversation was kind of in this area. Um, but for anyone on the new moon in this one, I would journal and say, how am I doing? What's my emotional temperature right now? Is there anywhere where I am harboring a lot of kind of pent up emotion that, needs to get out or needs to be expressed? Or is there something that I'm really afraid of that I just don't want to look at? Like what's under the rug that I'm, what are there any monsters under my bed that I'm just like not wanting to deal with or that have been kind of nagging? This is a really good time to bring them out and look at them and actually say, okay, what choices do I want to make here? And, how would I like to create moving forward so that I don't have to be afraid of this? That's probably one of the biggest ways that you can use this particular moon, um, to, yeah, just like start fresh and be like, oh, okay, I don't want to worry about that anymore. I'm going to have that conversation that I've been avoiding and dreading having, or I'm going to finally let it go because I can't keep this in my energy field any longer because of, you know, the moon's going to end up doing it for me if I can't. Yeah. Scorpio moons are always pretty intense. So just know if the moon's ever in Scorpio, you're going to be kind of more doing the work. Other moons, when the moon is in Libra, it's usually, I feel it's a little softer. And when the moon is in Cancer, it's going to be, you're more likely to have a good cry, like one of those like really cathartic healing cries, and be fine. So each moon has a different flavor to it, but Scorpio moons, yes, are typically,
You gotta be ready.
you gotta be ready.
I like it. I love it. I already feel like I know what needs to be addressed. So thank you. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
my pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you for being such like a willing astrology participant, I guess that's the word. Um, you really, I appreciate it so much, and I loved being able to talk with you and go in your. These are my notes that I'm rubbing. Go in your your astrology chart. Thanks for letting me nerd out for a minute.
I love that. I was nerding out with you. I was like, so I'm like, yes, I'm engaged. I'm taking it in. I still need to,
Yeah.
revisit that.
Oh my God.
Thank you.
Hit me up anytime. It's amazing. Like the more I go, the deeper you go in astrology, the more it's like, how is this like what? Like this is so accurate. It's so me. It's wild. Like I'm always amazed by it. And every time I do a read, I'm like, oh my God, this is it just like keeps becoming more interesting the deeper you go. There's so much. Um, but yeah, I will for sure we'll talk again later and I'll share more with you anytime.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you. This is so great. I'm going to stop the recording and sign off. But before we go, I just want to hear that one thing you were going to tell me about. So thank you everyone for tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed my mini reading with Jonathan. Um, and if you'd like to get a reading with me, you can go to my website, which is starpathastrology.com. And I have many different services and different kinds of readings available for astrology, chart comparisons, kids, couples, birth charts, the whole thing. And I will see you next time. Thanks.